Okay. Okay. So good evening, everybody. Thanks a lot for sticking around till the last session of the day. We totally acknowledge that we are the last one standing between where we are today and a nice aperitivo, especially today that the weather is getting better here in Rome. So we will stick on time and be as entertaining as possible, despite that the topic is the usual and old manufacturing challenges. So that is a challenge on us to keep it alive. I'm Luca Alberici. I'm the head of cell and gene therapy for a CDMO called AGC Biologics with operation in Europe. As a matter of fact, Italy, here in Milan, and US and Yokohama, Japan. But today I'm together with a great set of panelists coming from different areas, CDMOs, developer, tool providers, so we will hear a lot of different perspectives into manufacturing. So without further ado, I'll hand over to the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll kick off the discussion.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Harris. I'm the Chief Strategy and AI Officer for OmniaBio, which is a Canadian-based CDMO. I joined Omnia last July to really start to tackle manufacturing challenges, in particular in the autologous CAR-T and the allo iPSC space. I joined where I was head of academic medicine and public health for AWS, Amazon, for over 5 years. And prior to that, I was in the cell and gene therapy space for over 20 years before going to Amazon. My group, we worked a lot on AI and robotics while at Amazon, and we were developing AI models to actually predict patient response to different types of CARs. And I'll talk a little bit about that in my discussion. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Hughes. I lead the technical operations for Galapagos. Been with the company just over a year now. Prior to Galapagos, I led the bioindustry unit for Miltenyi. So I've been in the CGT space for quite some time, focusing on decentralized manufacturing, end-to-end solutions, and figuring out how to democratize medicine by reducing costs and more effective production.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alessandro Linciano. I'm the site manufacturing science and technology lead for Novartis, Cell and Gene. I'm working in Stein, so in Switzerland, in the Cell and Gene side, but part of a network of sites that are serving this privileged purpose, I have to say, because working on this field is really a privilege in my point of view. Novartis is well known for their commercial manufacturing, for their product, also in the cell and gene. But as you have heard, also in these days, Novartis is offering contract manufacturing also in this field.
Good afternoon, I'm Myriam Makhloufi. I'm Chief Strategy Officer at TreeFrog Therapeutics. TreeFrog Therapeutics is a biotech company that has developed non-encapsulation technologies that enable differentiation and expansion of stem cell. And in fact, we use this technology to develop our own program. So today we have 2 different programs in Parkinson's disease and also in liver disease. And we also use this technology to put in place some collaboration around this technology. And the last partnerships that we've put in place was last year with Vertex Pharmaceuticals for the type 1 diabetes.
My name is Ignacio. I'm the Chief Operations Officer of CellReady. CellReady is a G-Rex-centric CDMO in Houston, Texas. We manufacture cell therapy and gene-modified cell therapy, and our vision is structurally reduce the cost of cell therapy by identifying and applying standards and unlocking the full potential of G-Rex.
Thanks, everybody. So as you see, the title is Challenges, Innovation, and Future Direction. So let's start with the challenges. And in particular, you heard that there are people using different approach. So let me start with Robert. Galapagos went for a decentralized model, of course. Alessandro, Novartis is obviously very centralized into the approach. And Myriam, you went more for allo, avoiding the problem as a whole. So can each of you focus a bit on the challenges of the strategy that you selected?
I think if we look at the approved therapies in the market, they all suffer from the same challenges. Very high cost of goods that limits patients' ability, right? The US population is 5% of the world. That's not exactly curing the masses. They're very difficult to scale. They're difficult to transfer because of human resources, technical challenges, out of specifications from making dose, from potencies. And finally, they're a very long cycle time, and they're very difficult to predict when the drug will be ready. And so if you're a clinician trying to manage bridging therapies or lymphodepletion, it's difficult to predict. And so I think as we develop the next company, the next generation of therapies, if we go down the same path, we're going to expect the same result, right? And so I think that's really what drives innovation, is we need to look for different ways. And I understand Galapagos has chosen decentralized, but I think there's different strategies that you're going to hear. We have to overcome those fundamental challenges. In order to treat patients around the world, they have to be cheaper, more accessible, and more robust. And unless we can do that, we're going to continue to face the same challenges.
Yeah, if I can add that, I totally agree with you. There are challenges. As I was mentioning, I do feel really privileged to not just serve the purpose of these therapies, but also to have been part of the journey in Novartis. We were the first one to launch a commercial product, and we've really moved from being a mono product site to now being a multi-product facility, even welcoming clients into the facility. That's really marked a journey, not of challenges, but of opportunities to get more optimized and to reduce, as we were mentioning, the cost by by pushing different levers. We know which are the different elements that makes the final cost of these therapies, at least to manufacturing these therapies, but there are ways of reducing to optimize these costs. So sure, first impact, these are challenges, but on the other way, these represent an opportunities. And opportunities can overcome only by one thing, that is experience. By acknowledging that whenever you start to accumulate experience, that's what you have to really protect and continue to improve. That's what I'm seeing Novartis, Cell and Gene being extremely competitive, but in the same time also effective in what they are doing because of the experience. I'm working with a team, within my team, but in the site and in the network of experts. And that's, from my point of view, the element that makes the difference.
We did hear a lot about the difference nowadays between capacity and capabilities, and I think everybody's understanding that it's not just about having a facility and bioreactors that makes the thing happen. So I really appreciate that comment. But Myriam, over to you. Challenges in the APS space and what you do in particular to make these therapies?
Yes, in fact, today I wanted to share our experience more on the regulatory part related to the manufacturing, because on our side, if I take the example of our product that we have today in preclinical stage, this product has some specific features. In fact, we use a new platform that I explained that will enable us to expand and to differentiate our cells. And in parallel, the product is in fact a microtissue, or 3D microtissue, which is different from what we have today in terms of cell therapy. The cell therapy are more really on the single cell suspension. So with these two different characteristics, we at TreeFrog, in fact, we engage early some discussion with agencies in terms of, in both aspects. I mean, in terms of manufacturing, as we are using this new technology platform, and also regarding our product, the format of our product. So we had early this kind of discussion with the FDA, and we've started, for example, with the CAT meeting related to the technology, and we have also some discussion with the EMEA for the product format. And we find that having this kind of discussion earlier on the program was really key for us to define, in fact, the regulatory pathway for our program. And we think that pursuing this kind of discussion with the agency is really key to make sure that we can advance and progress together on this new field. And it's not also a question about agencies, but it's also CDMO and suppliers have to also play a key role around this ecosystem, because we are talking about quality of the raw materials, and we need also the help of CDMO and suppliers to be really involved in this discussion.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, manufacturing and CDMO is obviously a very linked connection. So let me involve Ken and Ignacio in this discussion. So Myriam explained that they have a pretty unique technologies, right? CDMOs have this issue to manage heterogeneity of processes, moving from allo, auto, 15, 20 different cell processing equipment. How do you guys manage the flexibility required into the different processes versus cost optimization, throughput, and being very good in each one of them? Can you elaborate that?
Yeah, we look at it, let me start with the autologous side of the equation. In the autologous side, and in particular when you look at CAR T, what we're facing in CAR T really is the need to scale now. The therapies have proven, at least in hematology oncology, to be effective. However, they're underprescribed. One of the things we saw at Amazon when we started to dig into where should we be building models in cell and gene therapy, it was a shocking statistic that only about 30% of patients are even offered a cell therapy when they're diagnosed with a liquid tumor. And the reason for that starts right in the electronic medical record, is the oncologist or the clinician who's in front of the patient is either not versed in the therapies or finds the complexity of it to be challenging. So we were thinking about how we could move artificial intelligence to the prescriber in the EMR, and then transfer that over into the manufacturer. What we discovered in that analysis was actually the donor cell, the starting material, is so variable that we needed to provide the clinician even more power to feel comfortable prescribing that therapy. And so what we developed, and simultaneously at OmniaBio was working on this, and they actually published in Nature in 2023, the ability to predict non-responders, so let's say really sort of pooped out or poor CAR T cells that just will not make a good product. AI can predict that with 90% probability that this donor has bad T cells. Don't put them on therapy or into the trial. Very, very complex to get into who could be a responder and how they will respond. I won't even go there in this discussion. But we found that to be extremely valuable, and that's one area for OmniaBio that we're focused on. Second area is, if you can imagine, the vein-to-vein, or what I would call the clinical logistics in autologous, and I think you sort of alluded to that as well, of being quite challenging. In healthcare, we need to think about getting much better at logistics and prediction of moving materials around. Amazon's really good at that. And as we were looking at models, we were like, we can deliver same-day package. And when you order a product from Amazon, it goes through over 80,000 AI iterations to decide how to get that product to you and where to ship it from. And we're like, we can apply this in cell and gene therapy as well. So at OmniaBio, we're looking at those two areas of sort of low-hanging fruit to apply AI. On the allo side, quite a different package. What's really interesting there is these really long manufacturing cycle times of 50 days, 60 days, 100 days, and what's happening in process. And there we're also applying AI to actually look at the cell morphology to make sure that cells remain homogeneous and don't start manufacturing a very heterogeneous population. And to give us, should we stop this process? Is this a manufacturing process that's gone off the rails versus leaving it in a GMP suite for 100 days? If we see that indication, the AI predicts that, we can do that. We can intervene very early on and take it out of production, and that's a cost savings. So those are just some examples of how artificial intelligence lower costs and improve outcomes.
Thank you. And I think this really leads to basically innovation, and obviously artificial intelligence is a good one. You guys are certainly learning a lot from other industries, and sometimes being in this field, you hear two big school of thoughts. One is cell and gene therapy is too peculiar. We cannot apply anything from other industry. But sometimes people coming from other industries say, yeah, we have been there 20 years ago. Let me teach you how that works. And probably both are right, both are wrong. So it's good that every now and then we can make something useful out of other industry. But going back to AI, I would like to get somebody else in it, because I mean, you guys are doing amazing stuff. Some others, and I include myself in those others, are probably still try to use AI more to streamline the day-to-day activity, to do report summaries, emails, slides, etc. That is already a significant advantage. But how you guys are implementing AIs or similar innovation in each of your company? Maybe Ignacio, do you want to give it a try?
We are not.
We are not, okay.
I think we have to come back to basics. Probably the approach, I mean, we're trying to merge together cell and gene therapy. Probably we have to first define, what is the meaning of cell therapy or gene-modified cell therapy versus gene therapy, which is pretty much viral vector. Manufacturing one versus the other is, totally different animals, right? So the approach to the scale-up is totally different. So, and also the amount of the patients that you may have, the population, and what is the addressable market that you may have one versus the other, whether you are trying to address, ultra rare disease, or you're going to go for, cancer patient that you're going to have in the order of 1 million people, right? I think I agree with the co-panelists here. There are two main issues that we should fix. One is industrialization, and the second one is cost of therapies as a whole. But everybody's talking about it, but really nobody's doing it. We have to remove 1 or 2 zeros. That's how you really reduce the cost of cell therapies, and that's how you enable patients access. Because for as long as the cell therapies cost $500,000, you're not going to reach 1 million patients, which is pretty much the amount of patients that die on a yearly basis for just blood cancer, right? So I was watching some presentations yesterday, and there is a new company in Europe that they just reached commercial phase, and they're doing CAR-T, which is pretty much the same CAR-T that Kymriah was offering, or same type of construct that Kymriah had in 2017, but they're selling more expensive. 7 years later. How that does make sense, I don't know. But we're going backwards. So, okay, coming back to basics, so what is the meaning of that? I'm not opposed to artificial intelligence, but I think that there are faster and easier ways to do it without, really further investing more money into new technology. Well, you have really low-hanging fruit, like applying continuous improvement to your processes. So what is the meaning of that? It's very simple. Batch records improvement, reducing of process step, reducing of open process step, the amount of media exchanges that you have, the seeding density, your seeding technique, what is your moment, the right moment to do the harvest, improve your sample testing. There are so many things that you can do that, well done, will significantly reduce your cost. But wrongly done, you are just continuing adding up. And eventually you say, well, cell therapies are very expensive. No, they are not. Your decisions are expensive. Your bad decisions are expensive, and guess what? They add up. So when you take several bad decisions, eventually you have a really, really expensive process, but that doesn't make a standard of really costly cell therapies. Like you are paying for learning on the job. So Look, I see people investing in automation and you know, what is the new big thing, the next big machine, but the truth of the matter is, and we were asking this question to the audience the other day, hey, how many of you are applying continuous improvement? How many of you know about Lean? How many of you know about Six Sigma, which is continuous improvement methodology that have been around for 100 years, and they're utilizing pretty much any manufacturing industry all around the world? And you know the answer? The answer is zero. Zero. So that is your opportunity. Just come back to basic, and guess what? Got zero money. So for times that there is, you know, it's like there is no so much money coming into the industry. So you should find ways to do much more with less without having to spend more money, right? So just looking into continuous improvement, look into your processes, and to me is definitely the way to go.
Thanks, Ignacio. And again, I think you're touching a pretty critical point. It is, you start with a pretty old or whatever non-optimized process. If you want to cut costs, you should optimize, but then because you don't have money, comparability timelines, you simply don't do that, and then you end up with something that is not optimized, that costs a lot. So we need to find a good balance between bringing it forward and in the meantime making sure that somebody's working on it.
But hold on, but to your point, I think
I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I absolutely 100% agree with what you said, that we need to reduce costs, clean up batch records, clean up errors, clean up deviations. But AI can do that for us much faster and cheaper than it can take somebody to go through hundreds of batch records and find deviation anomalies and recurring issues. We have advanced machine learning that go through all of our incoming receipts from DMUs across 8 different countries, analyzing trends, and then putting together standard answers so the next time that question comes in, an automated answer comes up, so we don't have to pay an individual to find an answer and solution answer. So 100% agree that continuous improvement needs to be implemented. My suggestion is let's let the computers do what the computers do well, and let's let the people do what the people do well. And so I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think they're actually tied together in an effective model.
Yeah, if I can add, I totally agree. So we should not look at AI as a tool that is reinventing the wheel, but actually a tool that is making this wheel spinning faster. It's just a matter, as I already heard here, to taking the right decision from the very beginning. The life cycle of these products are extremely compact. In the moment you thinking about of the lunch is already too late to take decisions. So it's extremely important not to have everything ready, but to make the right choice of what have to be ready and which are also the environment that you need to prepare in order to being able to welcome any improvement that could come through AI or through operational excellence. It's not excluding one of the other. So just to bring an example, because in our network, we can also make comparison between who came first and who came later, and also how then the improvement can be passed by. We are working, cell and gene therapies in Novartis are made of 2 sites, one in US and one in Switzerland. And the US sites came first. We came later through tech transfer. As of today, we are working at the same level. We have all registered countries equally in the 2 sites. We came later. As I always said, we stepped on the shoulders of a giant because what they made in US, it was really a lot. But what we did on top was to prepare the environment. One thing that we did since the very beginning was to start with a paperless facility. So all MES, so MBR was electronic. All equipments connected to the upper level systems. As of today, our batch record review is made on exceptions. Only when it's required, few items have been checked. It reduced a lot. And for the ones that maybe are still early in their journey, how a batch record could like for this kind of therapies, well, do not be scared. We're talking about thousands of pages. It's a lot. If you end up on reviewing these 1,000 pages with workforce, that's where costs are going to pile up. So it's possible. It's just, again, a matter of taking the right choices and also to partner with the right with the right entities. For us, it was to decide where to build the site and in which kind of campus. For the Swiss side, for our site, we leverage the knowledge that was already there out of the other businesses. So small molecule, large molecule was already on the campus. We leveraged that knowledge and we applied for cell and gene to bring up to a cost-efficient manufacturing facility. So it's not impossible. AI is just there, waiting on the door to just make this wheel spinning faster.
Thank you. And remaining on your experience in Novartis, I think you guys were able along the way to significantly modify both the viral vector but also the cell therapy process, shortening that. Can you elaborate a bit on how while commercial supply was going over, that you could work on the process to make sure that the cost and the patient outreach was manageable?
Yes, so that's related to what I was telling before. It's, again, making the right choice since the very beginning, considering that the work does not end at the point you start in. So we start as a monoproduct. Now we are commercial, clinical manufacturing, multi-product facility, also with clients in the network. That brings a level of complexity. Processes are changing. First generations of CAR-T, second generation of CAR-Ts, the timings, the manufacturing times are shrinking a lot. The complexity is reducing. Really, I never seen, and I've been in different business units, I never seen an evolution speed as the one that I'm observing in this field. Even in conferences, this is the second year that I'm attending this conference, you can really see that we are already moving forward in terms of topics that we already assuming as established, as baseline. We are already looking forward into trying to overcome the big questions, how we can make these therapies available to a multitude of patients, because that's the final target. Through reducing the cost, to leveraging the platform indications as FDA has made, automations, robotics, all of these are serving one unique scope. It's that for enabling the abundance of these therapies. As of today, yes, it's still challenging to get into these therapies, I know, but it's not going to be a matter of decades, it's just years.
Sure. Robert, let's stay on the digitalization piece. You guys are working with a lot of different centers, and I guess each of them will have their own ERP, sometimes electronic batch record, most of the time it's probably not. Somebody has LIMS, probably nobody has a proper MES in place. Chain of custody, chain of identity, it's probably something that you need to take care of. Can you elaborate a little bit on how you basically cross and manage with a lot of different systems?
Great topic, and one of the ones that we spent significant amount of time thinking through before we actually went through the process. But we very carefully select our DMU, decentralized manufacturing unit partners. And when we do a tech transfer, we tech transfer in our entire platform. And that platform includes our MES, our QMS, our COI, our COC, the entire system. And what it allows us to do is get standardized inputs across every single one of our DMUs. And if you look at the average time that goes into manufacturing a CAR-T, it's between 400 to 500 man hours if you go from the start of procurement through QC testing and release. And depending on where you burden your labor rate at, if you burden it at $100 an hour, that's $45,000 of labor that goes into that CAR-T batch. That's significant. So how do you step change that? Is through the automation and the digitization. So our Accelit platform is what it's named, allows us to use steps with automated verifiers. So you don't have to have two people in the lab at the same time. You have one being verified by barcoding and by scanning, right? So we've been able to remove man hours from the batch, and we have a target of getting that under 100 hours. So if we can remove 75% of the man hours from a manufacturing and an analytical release of a batch, we've cut down a significant portion. We've step changed the cost of therapies. But the only way we can do that is by controlling that entire digital ecosystem. And so that's one of the upfront conversations we have with the CMOs is, are you willing to adopt our platform? Because if they were trying to run it on their MES, their LIMS, their deviation management system, we'd be duplicating efforts and again, doubling man hours involved. So it's a bit of a conversation.
That will duplicate effort on EDR probably to run to two different systems. So.
Absolutely. So it's a bit of an upfront to find the right partner. Sure. And it's upfront training, right? Because we have to go in and train on the systems and we have to maintain the systems. But the back end payoff it's unbelievable with what we're able to achieve on the output.
Okay. Ken, what if, I mean, I assume you have a pretty good digital infrastructure. What if somebody comes over and say, do you want to implement all different system? How would you go about that?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. We're experiencing that right now with one client that we have that has their own concept of what their batch record needs to be and what they want entered manually. So we've completed the engineering runs, and when we got to the end of the engineering runs based on their system that didn't integrate digitally with us at the level we would like, we did the analysis and it was going to be 9,000 man hours just to put those records through QC. 9,000 man hours for us in Canada is about $1 million in cost. That was, for us, also not calculated in the cost projection to the client. And so now you're having discussions about, you have an archaic process, this is the cost of going archaic, can we digitize you, can we take you into sort of the new world? And the answer is yes, but it's do we speak the same language? And our client's just not at the digital literacy that we would like to do that quickly. So we're probably going to have to think about doing it stepwise and come to a median. But I think it's a really good example to say what a non-digital design and a modern design can actually end up costing in real dollars. And that's just going to transfer right over to development costs that they're going to have to eat, over time. And we see that a lot even in the autologous space. These academic processes that have grown up and can produce, at best maybe 1,000 doses a year. If CAR T really hits, in particular in solid tumors and in autoimmunity, we're going to need scale of many thousands of doses, and that is only going to be achieved through digital and probably automation as well.
Thank you. And we are entering the final part of the discussion. So we talked about challenges. We talked about innovation. Most of that has to do with AI and digitalization. Let me go into also future direction, starting with Ignacio. So there is a lot of rumors or technology around robotics, so like isolators with robotic arms moving stuff around. There are other that invested into benchtop equipment all in one, or even, and I do believe CellReady is actually kind of a unit operation type of technology. What is in your mind the winning, if there is an ever winning technology for making these manufacturing therapies cost effective? Which of these, let's say, three solutions would you bet on? Ignacio, do you want to go for it? Well, I already know the answer because you clearly belong to one of the three. So I would still like to get your perspective on that.
Well, look, a lot of people are looking into automation. Is automation the future? Yes, potentially. But I believe you have to look into your process first. Streamline your process, simplify your process, standardize your process, and only when you have a process that you have walked multiple times, then you make it automatic. I don't think that you can jump into automation right away without doing a serious simplification and continuous improvement of your process, because automation won't fix your issues, will make your issues automatic, right? So you have to be very careful with that. So there is actually a lean term that is called automation, which is human intelligence built into the machine. And I think we have a long way to go. I see multiple automation options out there, and I don't think that's the real solution for the scale-up. But the problem is, and I think I see the co-panelists here talking about it, you're talking about the future, you're talking about scale-up, scale-out, projections, modeling, artificial intelligence, but nobody has done it. You know, you're still talking about the future, and I would like to ask, when you talk about, for example, artificial intelligence, have you seen any artificial intelligence model generated that has reduced the cost of cell therapies? Yes, give me one. Right, because we have done it already 2 times, more than 20 times cost reduction, right? So I continue hearing the future, and we will do, and it will, and you are talking about something like it's a reality, and it's not. It's not even close to reality. I hear Novartis, for example, talking about cost reduction, but you are the one who launched Kymriah 7 years ago, and the price remained the same. So I don't think that we are tapping the right or asking the right questions in relation to how we can move forward and scale up, and I don't think that short-term automation is the answer to it.
Okay, for sure. I think there is a certain degree of process optimization that everybody needs to look at, but also keep in mind what the end game is. Myriam, let's go all the way here into future direction. I know compared to the other panelists, you're obviously much earlier in your maturity for GMP manufacturing and way to the commercialization for routine. But since you are still in time, maybe to make certain decision right, can you elaborate more on what direction are you taking to make sure that you don't repeat others' errors that have been made before?
Yeah, okay. From biotech point of view and from our point of view, I think the challenge is more, again, on the fact that we need to collaborate together. I mean, industry, regular agencies, and also CDMO and other suppliers, to make sure that we can build around an ecosystem, and starting from raw materials, but also to the process and method to the therapeutic assets. So if we want to be sure that we can be sustainable at some point, we really need to work on these different topics, because also not having a sort of standardization at a regulatory level is also a way to spend time in terms of time to market, and also it costs money to find a way to meet the expectation coming from these different regions.
Thank you. And yeah, you touch upon regulation. We all know, and we have previously discussed in the last 2 days what has happened and what's going on with FDA, with the tariffs, and that is impacting logistics, but to a certain extent is impacting manufacturing. And I think Novartis recently announced that there is going to be 23 billion investment in US manufacturing, if I'm correct, but most of the large pharma are kind of issuing similar statements. So maybe, Alessandro, what is, in your view, some short-term or long-term consequence of the current situation, and how can we preserve the continued supply in this moment of uncertainties?
So for me, because I'm working in a manufacturing site, and I don't want to get into the discussion regarding commercial and pricing. This is not up to me to decide these strategies. What I'm always asking to myself, it's how the future is going to look like. And as I was mentioning before, the future for me is going to look like with the abundance of these therapies. How to get prepared there, it's the thoughts that we need to put on there. And sure, if you have one product and you try to load into that all of the topics that we discuss on AI, robotics, closed process, automations, for sure, you will get an overdose, and then it's not going to work. It's just a matter of understanding which are the improvements that have to be deployed on your journey. We started, and that's again, my personal experience. We started with Kymriah in a certain way, in a semi-automated, semi-closed process. But already, if I'm looking at the improvements that happens 2 years later when we transfer into Stein, we were already doing a quantum leap, having an hybrid manufacturing between zone C and zone B, something that it was not there before. Today, we're already looking at the clinical trials, the improvement of automations with the second generations of CAR-T therapies. Again, it's just a matter of picturing in our mind how the future is going to look like, decide which are the improvements and the opportunities that can be taken now, and then the ones that can be left for the future. There is not going to be a 10 years future ahead. These are just, and it's again, the natures of our therapies, something that have to be considered within the 2-3 years in front of you. As of today, if we were successful even to engulf in our business without creating any conflict, the contract manufacturing, it's because we were able to select the right measure and the right opportunities for Novartis, but also for the client. Just giving a perspective on how it could look like, and we already touched base on that. Selecting the environment that you want to establish on your site will allow you to really welcome whenever technology is coming. The data for us in both sides are sent to the upper level system, into the cloud. So whatever equipment is going to come into the site, we'll send the data upward. Then any other system that will be included, even for tracking the performances of quality system, will simply take the data out of this cloud. So is it futuristic? No, it's something that the other businesses are doing regularly. And that can be also adopted for our world. So it's not a future that looks cars flying around. Again, it's just a matter of selecting the right choices for our business. And there's space for everything in my future. I'm looking for really seeing abundance of all of the business model that we have seen today and we have discussed on the previous days, because it's really abundance what I'm looking for.
Thank you, Alessandro. Robert, how the future will look like for you?
You know, I'm old enough to remember when biologics were new and we were all figuring out how to scale up and building giant bioreactors and learning analytics and learning how to characterize. And now we have a very well-established path, right? We have disposable bioreactors, we have automated analytics, we have fully characterized proteins. There's a checklist when you file your BLA now. Just make sure you've got all these things taken care of. And I see us as an industry now in the same spot with cell and gene therapy, and we're at an inflection point. The first generation therapies are there. We can only build on them from there. I think we all know what needs to be built on. We need to increase accessibility, reduce costs, right? Increase robustness. I think different organizations have different ways to get there. But the future to me is if one of my grandchildren or great-grandchildren is diagnosed with a blood cancer or a solid tumor, they're going to go to their oncologist, and the oncologist is going to say, you're cured. Right? That's the BHAG, the big hairy goal that we should all have, is to cure cancer. Right? There's a sign in our building that says, keep it simple, cure cancer. It's what we're trying to do. And I don't think that any one direction is going to work. It's going to be many different smart organizations working at it from different areas. You know, many people went to the keynote this morning and heard Paul speak about how they cured HIV. It was a total industry collective effort with the help of regulators and clinicians and research. It's going to be the same thing here, and it's not insurmountable. We're just in the early stages, and we need to continue to step forward.
Absolutely. I think where we are heading today with tens of thousands of CAR-T patients treated was unbelievable just a few years ago. So technology is making significant progress, but we are still a big way ahead of us. But it's a matter of collaboration. Can I hand over to you to the final comment of how you and OmniaBio see the future?
We absolutely are bullish on CAR-T and autologous CAR-T, in particular when you look at some of the indications in solid tumors like glioblastoma, both pediatric and adult, that just can't be treated with any other modality. CAR-T becoming, first-line therapy, and now you're talking about a patient population just in the US alone approaching, 7, 10, 12,000 patients. That's at a totally different scale than we've had in hematology. I don't know any organization today that is ready to push through that kind of dose production. I see that as being kind of our next horizon in CAR-T, is we've just got to get to that 5,000 and then the 10,000 threshold at the right cost with the right quality and safety level. And I think that's near term and is going to be within the next couple of years. And that's what OmniaBio is focusing on.
Thank you so much. And with that, I will like to close the session. If you have any question for all the panelists, they will stick around a couple of minutes. Or there is now the cocktail reception that I think is a much better opportunity to actually continue this discussion. So please join me. Thanks, everybody, for the participation.